Hi there everyone, welcome back to another video, and today we've taken a trip down to Hattons. And yes, as you can see, this is where the War of the Worlds layout has been stored since the end of filming. And today we're going to go and look over it, and we're going to talk about some of the little details that we got here. And it's a really good opportunity to perhaps go a little bit more in depth than they were able to on GMRC. So without further ado, let's take a closer look.
Let's get started. So we're down here at the front of the layout now, and if you've seen the show already, you'll know how incredible this layout is. There's something to see from every angle, the scenery is incredible, and it really does adhere to that theme of classic novels. So tell us a little bit about the layout.
Well, it was inspired by H.G. Wells's novel War of the Worlds, but also drew some inspiration from the film adaptations, as well as quite heavily from the Jeff Wayne War of the Worlds musical adaptation. So if you've ever seen that, in the actual artwork for the album, there's some wonderful pictures, and we used a lot of them as our cues for the model.
You can really see some of that theming coming through. It's got that real powerful nature from those covers in there. But there's just so many different scenes, so how did you choose how to lay everything out?
I think initially when we came up with the theme, it was a case of trying to decide what were the key telegraphed cameos from the book, from the film, that people would immediately look at this model and go, that's War of the World. Because we wanted it to say the theme out to people without us having to explain it.
Yeah.
So the Martian tripods were very much a must. We knew that they had to dominate the scene. But then also the Thunder Child, the sinking of the Thunder Child is another big bit in the narrative.
Yeah.
So we tried to include that as well. And then lots of other little tiny bits like the red weed, and mankind on the run, that kind of thing, and just build it up from there, and always make sure that we had in the back of our minds that it needed to be a good visual spectacle on television.
You can really see how all that's come through in the model as well. So how, I know you're obviously a big fan of War of the Worlds, but how did you choose that as your theme?
Once we formed the team and we got given the theme, we had a meeting, the 6 members of the team, and everybody had kind of gone away and thought, what can we do for classic novels? And there was a few ideas banded around, and the idea was actually that I put forward was War of the Worlds, and I took with me that Jeff Wayne album cover.
Yeah.
And as soon as I kind of brought that out and said we could do this, I think the whole team just got on board, because it was just such an iconic idea.
I don't think there's been many people who've been inspired by record covers for a model before, so it's definitely a first, I think.
Well, yeah, but I think the artwork from that is very, very memorable.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Very distinctive, and it kind of sells the story without needing to tell the audience. It's all about showing them it.
That's it. And I think the layout was the same thing.
Thank you.
So obviously the Great Model Railway Challenge is a massive team effort as well. So how did you come together with your team, the Rail Riders?
I think I was probably the common connection between everybody, in that I knew all of the 5 other people. So we had Les Cliff, who I'd worked with on Biggest Little Railway up in Scotland, and I knew him quite well, and he's just such an incredible artist. So I knew that if I had him on board, he can create these landscapes so effectively and quickly. But then also a friend of mine, Brian Long, I've done a lot of stuff railway related with him as well, so we got him on board. Stefan Nielsen, who is actually the editor of a magazine that I write for a lot. I need to take a run up to pronounce it, and it's like Modeliana Schwags Magazinet, and it's the big Swedish railway publication for modelers. So I got him on board because I thought it would work quite well with this more multinational team. Then Melanie Lewis, she's the creative genius behind actually scratch building and making these Martians work. And she's an electronics genius. In her younger days, she used to write software for mobile phones.
Oh, wow.
So she's actually one of the people who makes modern mobile phones work because she wrote the software, but she's just incredible with electronics. And then we had Simon A.C. Martin, who again is somebody that I worked with on Biggest Little Railway in Scotland. And I just knew that he's very creative, he's got this enthusiastic energy, and he's just willing to have a go at everything. So You know, he took on so many tasks that he'd never tried before, but he did it with this enthusiasm that I knew he would, that just won through the show. And that's what you need. You need enthusiasm from all the members of the team.
Well, it's definitely an eclectic mix of people there, and a lot of different skills coming through, which obviously stood you in good stead for the competition.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. Having obviously got the advantage of having seen Series 1, you get an idea of the kind of skill sets that you need at least one member of the team to have. So you need somebody who can do the electrics, the track laying, the ballasting. That's always very important. I mean, I think even this season, Steve has already mentioned his mantra of kinky track. So, you know, track laying is quite important, and that's an area that I knew that I could do. Similarly with the landscape, I knew that Les Cliff would be able to deliver because I've seen his work, and it is just quite frankly amazing what he achieves so quickly. In the case of Melanie as well, with the electronics, you need somebody who can make the animations, because they're very big on this animation thing. It's not just enough to make a static model railway that trains just run through this landscape. There's got to be so much more going on than that. And in the case of Melanie, she was something I knew would be able to deliver something special, which she did in the form of the Martians.
Just on the animations, well, could you talk us through a bit of how those worked?
The actual Martians themselves, they're powered, I believe, by, I think it's a home-built, it's like almost like an Arduino board or something.
Right.
I don't know a lot about
like a Raspberry Pi sort of thing.
That kind of thing, but it's contained within the actual body. I don't want to dismantle them because I get in trouble if I break them. But it's a programmable controller which allows them to pan from side to side. But it's not a regular movement. It's done so it's a slightly irregular movement, so that they don't come across as if they're just running through a program. They will act randomly.
Right.
They will fire lasers, which are laser pointers, and coupled with the smoke machine, you get such a brilliant effect of this like laser cutting through across the landscape. And then they also have glowing engine pods at the back that kind of pulsate in, again, a sort of semi-rhythmic manner. And all of that coupled together just makes this really almost sinister machine that just wowed people.
Well,
this was what we were eating.
We got to see the episode as well, isn't it? And it just really brings the layout to life with some of those extra effects and brings that theme home, coupled with some of the more simpler but also quite impressive effects with the exploded train in the back scene here, and also with the boat as well, which is on fire.
Yeah, I think that's something as well that we had in the back of our minds, that we wanted to keep this programme accessible.
Yeah.
So you wanted the wow factor, we got that with the tripods, but you didn't want to alienate the viewers by doing things that they think, oh, that's well out of my league.
Yeah.
So a lot of the different techniques and some of the other animations, like the Thunder Child, are specifically done using much simpler techniques that anybody could do to show that, you know, there's so many different ways to achieve a good result in a model railway.
It's great that you've mentioned that really as well, because you only get a very short time frame to produce this layer, don't you? It's a matter of days to create something like this.
It's filmed from start to finish over 3 days, and each day you get maybe 10 hours in the studio. So the first day you've got a 10-hour build, second day a 10-hour build, but the final day you only get 3 to 4 hours in the morning, and it's really just fettling time.
Yeah.
You know, if you're still building major components by then you're really struggling. And then the rest of that third day is filming the big reveal and all of the shots that you see of trains running and the animations working. So that's not really a build day, and it's also hampered by, you've got a film crew keep coming and say, oh, can we film that again from another angle? And there's all these restrictions of television, so you're very much against the clock. But I think what it shows is that actually you can get a lot done in a very limited space of time.
It shows what you can do, doesn't it? Because I'd say it's very impressive to get an operable layout done in a matter of a day or two.
Yeah,
and to get all of this unique scenery done, like you said, with the animations and all the effects, that's pretty good going in that kind of time period.
I mean, we're helping the pre-builds that we could take there with us, but there was still most of this got built on location, and you know that comes across on the episode. You see the very start where it's pretty much bare baseboards. There's a little bit of track that you're allowed to lay and ballast and get wired up first, but they still wanted one of the 3 boards has to be this barren flat wasteland.
Yeah,
and you know it's when you've planned through how you're going to use those 6 people, how you're going to make sure that you don't get in each other's way. There's actually quite a lot that you can do very, very quickly.
Just takes a lot of careful planning and teamwork, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. And we had people in, they had the art room, you'll hear it referred to on the programme, and it was a separate room where people who were putting together buildings, electronics could work. So we had a couple of people who would be working hard in there, and then we had a few people around the layout working on different bits of the scenery. And quite often there'd be somebody outside spray painting something, and something that was really messy. So by managing the team, I think Les kind of got us all to work in a way that was really efficient on the time, and you had to do that. And from what I saw, all the other teams were very good at time management as well.
Definitely, you can really see that come through on the show as well. So, coming back to the start of on your team as well, you came up with the name Rail Riders, which for those that don't know was a fantastic initiative in the late 70s, early 80s?
It ran from, I think it was 81 to 91 in the days of British Rail. And it was about encouraging people to, especially young people, to kind of explore Britain's rail network and get used to the idea of travelling by train and enjoying travelling by train.
So is that something you had a personal connection with in your past?
Myself, no. The name itself, there was quite a few suggestions between the team, and then we just kind of voted on it. And it was one of the other team members that came up with that, and that's the direction that the team decided to go with.
Fair enough. I think that's got a really nice connotation to it, like you say, with that getting youngsters into railways, but also potentially to the modern railway hobby as well.
Definitely,
and a lot of people do have that nostalgic link to the rail riders as well, so I'm sure they'd be rooting for you for that reason as well.
Definitely, I think there's definitely a mix of you wanting to tap into that nostalgia, the retro kind of thing, but also keep it fresh for the new audience, because I think it's very important for modern railways that we get through a new generation, a younger generation, and get them interested in this creative hobby.
Absolutely. And I think a show like this is very important for getting
very much
younger people into the hobby too. There was undoubtedly a lot of challenges here, wasn't there? So what was your biggest challenge on the show?
I think before we got there, it was knowing what to expect. I think deep down everybody is a little bit frightened of thinking, what if I get there and I'm actually really rubbish, I don't know what I'm doing. And I think that was the demon that played a lot of different teams. But once you got there and got stuck in, I think confidence was everything, and people became a lot more confident as they tackled builds. And it was great to see people take on model making things that they'd never tried before, and actually succeeding and proving that you don't have to be super good at model building to produce great effects. So I think that 5 minutes before they went, and you can start, and your mind is racing, thinking, what am I going to do? But it all came good in the end.
That's it. And it's something we've seen in the first series and in the series so far as well, isn't it? People who especially might not even have some of these skills already, just having a go and finding out, whoa, this is something you can do. And I think that's a great message for modelers at home to see, look at how easy it is to do something like this once you just get stuck in.
Definitely. We were talking about in episode 1, had the train set team, and they weren't railway modelers, but they tackled these tasks and showed that you can actually do these great effects and produce a really good model railway very easily if you give yourself the chance to tackle it. And I think that was a great advert for the hobby.
Absolutely.
Keeping it accessible.
So on the flip side of that first question, what was your favourite moment about being on the show?
Favourite moment? It's hard to tell, because once you get sucked into it, you're kind of in the zone, and it's you kind of get your game head on, and you just, all you're doing is concentrating on the model. But there was a moment where we got to ride on Sir McAlpine's railway, his garden railway.
Oh, right, yeah. And
that was amazing to just take that for a spin. I mean, it's just this incredible garden railway. Everybody thinks of a garden railway as perhaps, if you really splash out being G scale or something, but this thing is just the real deal.
It's the full standard gauge.
It's the real thing.
It's a bit of a roller coaster as well, isn't it? It's got quite a gradient on it.
It's the steepest adhesion worked gradient in the UK, and I believe it's actually steeper than anywhere in the US as well.
It's incredible.
It's 1 in 13 on a curve, and to put that into context, the Cromford High Peak Railway is considered like super steep, and I think the steepest area of that is a very small bit. It was 1 in 14, so it's actually steeper than the Cromford High Peak.
That's something.
It is. Yeah. When you actually look there and look at it, you think that train is never going to go up that, but it does.
It's impressive. So, one of the slightly more controversial parts of the show is the scratch build challenge.
Yes.
Now, what parts of this were part of that?
Well, actually, the secret, I think, to the scratch build challenge is you had to use a bit of all three items. You didn't have to use all of all three items. And I think sometimes some people get this misconception that, I've got to use it
Taken
all.
a bit literally.
Yeah, and actually, all you had to do was take a little bit of each, which makes it a little bit easier. In this particular round, it was Melanie who took that on, and she did a great job of it. And what she manufactured was the burning water tank and the chimney that's next to it. And they're actually made from one of the small little watering cans that you would use to, say, water plants in your conservatory. And I think what really tipped it for her on that was with the spout, she used a Dremel to actually Dremel in stone courses into the chimney to make it just that little bit more than just a plain spout. And then my personal favourite of the items that she made was the security fencing that you see underneath the viaduct. And that's made from a bird feeder, the kind of metal mesh around the outside. And she just cut it into strips, straightened it out, and glued plaster up strips to make the uprights. And my impression was that was what really won over the judges, because it just looked like it was supposed to be there. And that really is the secret. Integrate them into the model. Don't make them stick out like a sore thumb. And, all the teams did really well, actually. It was great to see. Nobody, I think, liked the Scratch Build Challenge, but from people watching at home, it kind of, it's something a little bit different, something unusual, something off the wall, and I think that works really well for television.
It's a good bit of challenging telly, isn't it? And it just shows, I think it's another good message for modelers in that it shows with a little bit of ingenuity what you can get out of everyday household items and what you can make models out of, even, especially if you're on a budget as well, what you can use to create pretty lifelike scenes.
Yeah, because some model equipment, scenery and that can be quite expensive, but I think what the Scratch Build Challenge aims to show is that you don't have to spend a lot to make great scenic items. All you really need is imagination. And the items that they've been picking throughout the series, I think they've deliberately tried to get them as wacky and out there as they can, specifically to show it doesn't matter, you just got to unleash your imagination on these items, turn them into anything.
Absolutely. So you all had a great look at the layout on TV, but I thought we'd just have a quick guided tour and see what some of your favourite features are.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, one of the things we try to do with this is get a good sense of height. So we've got the hillsides at the back on either side, and they're just made out of home insulation. It's a product called Jablite, but essentially it's a bit like polystyrene. And we used that to very quickly build up the height and then gave it a coat of plaster. And you can see that as a medium to start with the ground cover, just the bare plaster of Paris, plaster cloth, is great for just mixing in scatters and paints, and you get this really good effect that you can then put your trees and your buildings on. So we're very pleased with that. Then moving across, we've got the viaduct centrepiece. This is, I think it's 3 of the ratio viaduct kits. And this was built and weathered by Les Cliff. Again, it's just an amazing art.
Such an amazing job for such a it makes such a big impact on the layout.
Definitely, yeah. Because I mean, it's the kit itself is well made, but the weathering really brings that out. And to watch him do it, it's just like magic. Because he just, with weathering pastels and a bit of paint and water and throwing some scatter at the wet paint, he just went through it like a dose of salt. And I think it only took him maybe 3/4 of an hour to turn that from the bare plastic kit to what you see
Very
there.
impressive.
And then the Thunderchild itself, I built the core boat, and that's an old Airfix Foster Thornycroft motor torpedo boat kit. And the idea with that is that the kit itself is roughly the right scale for 00. And we wanted it so we could fit it into the model, but it not dominate the model. And then I've sliced away the bottom of that so that it looks like it's sinking from the stern. And then the lighting effect is actually, again, this is another thing that Les came up with. It's dyed cotton wool with flashing lights underneath. It's got a bit of squash here, but on the programme you see it in all its glory.
And for TV purposes, that makes
it does
it's
work.
enough. Yeah.
I think what a lot of the teams realise in this series is we're kind of making a prop for television. So there's a lot of things that we did on this to create an effect that is very visually eye-catching on television. I mean, the water itself here, this again is another one that Les did. And he just kind of, I think he used hot glue, bathroom mastic, and an assortment of different oil paints.
That's something that my eye was really drawn to, is this really aggressive
like
effects he's got.
churned up in anger.
It does evoke so much of reaction for me.
Yeah,
it's
it's
incredible.
like the model is just captured in this violent moment, almost like you freeze frame a film.
Yeah.
And Les is really good at doing these water effects, and it's completely solid there, so it's quite durable.
Yeah.
But it was just there with this bathroom sealant gun, just like building it up and building it up. And it's what I said before about confidence. He's got this confidence that it will work. So he's prepared to try and experiment with techniques which aren't necessarily conventional, but are very effective and actually quite easy. Once you watch him do it, you think, actually, I could do that. And I think that's one of the important things for the show.
The corner of your eye as well. If you just slightly look away and you have the little twinkle lines, it does. Your brain thinks that's a fire.
Yeah, because there's like a little microchip in there, and it's the same with the train on the viaduct, and it's programmed to flash a bank of LEDs in a random order,
Right.
so it kind of randomises the effect.
A bit of a flickering effect
Yeah,
there, then,
so
isn't it?
just try and move that a little bit over. You can you see it shining through the cotton wool.
Especially when you would have had that smoke effect there as well.
Yeah, and I've seen that effect done on not just burning ships like that, but burning buildings. You can get a great effect. Even like aeroplanes with an engine on fire suspended above a layout. And it's actually a surprisingly good effect. And it's just cotton wool. And if you want to keep that cotton wool from just sort of flopping down, you can just cut a length of wire coat hanger and use that as a core to kind of glue the cotton wool to, just so it holds its shape. Other things as well, the trees as well were one area that we were quite pleased with the effects. These are the Gauge Master seafoam kits, but with the secret with these, they make great trees, but the difference between what they look like out of the box and what you see here is simply down to hairspray and the same scatter that's on the like the static grass. And I just sprayed them all with hairspray, put them in a box with some loose scatter, and then just shook them all up. And that created this foliage effect so simply.
It's such an easy technique, isn't it? Where you can see how well that's paid off.
Yeah, and sometimes some of these techniques are easier than what the perceived wisdom is on how you would laboriously make trees with a sort of a metal wire armature and solder and latex rubber and painting. With this, it's just in a box, shake it up, and there they were. And I love stuff like that because it makes people think I could do that.
Yeah, I think that's really what the show is all about as well.
Definitely, yeah. And then other areas, I think my personal favourite areas, and it's a bit selfish of me in a way, the two front corners on this layout, because I was perhaps in danger of doing a little bit of the mistake that Missenden Modelers made in the first series. Because I did one corner at night, and there's a bit in the filming where they kind of leave you alone for 2 hours at the end of a day, and they wrap filming, but you get 2 hours to kind of knuckle down. You can make as much noise as you want. And I built that corner from scratch, and in the morning they came in and they're like, oh, we wanted to film that. How dare you like do stuff like that? And I said, well, how long did that take? And I said, well, it was 20 minutes. And they're like, yeah, right. And I said, no, I've saved you the other end. I'll do the other end, and I'll do it in less than 20 minutes. And you could see this look in their eyes of like, ow, yeah, don't believe you. And they did. They timed me as well. She had a stopwatch app on her iPhone, and I did it in, I think it was 18 minutes or something. But part of that was, I did do it a lot quicker than I would have at home, but I did it on purpose because what I wanted to show was that you don't have to take years and years and years of very meticulously sort of like combing every single blade of grass. Yeah. You can actually just throw materials at this and get a really good effect.
You can get a great layout of it in such a short space of time.
Yeah, and the materials that are on there, it's just scrap polystyrene underneath. There's Gauge Master grass mat torn up into tiny bits, and just an assortment of scatters and sand as well. My magic ingredient is kiln-dried sand that I get from a builder's merchant. And it's amazing how good it is when you just throw it at the scenery and it'll stick to paint and glue, and it gives you that earthy texture, which actually really brings, I think, a lot of the scenery through and makes it look like model scenery.
Absolutely. So there's some other interesting features here, obviously, with the Water World scenery. You've got the big capsule at the back there, which is quite a striking feature.
On the War of the Worlds thing, there's the part of the story where the capsules are coming from Mars. And the whole point of that capsule there is it's meant to be one of these capsules that's gone slam into the hillside. And you can see around its base, remodelled like the soil has been squeezed out where it's buried its way in. And it's become the source of the red weed. So all across the layout, you see the red weed is laid out almost like trails.
And it's erupted from the hillsides here a little bit.
Where it's I think a few of the bits have fallen off, but it was a solid line from where that tripod is. And you can see the burning trees as well in the background, which has blended it into the back scene, which I probably should mention the back scene, because that was done by Les as well. He's just an amazing artist. But he did it all with pastels to fit the scene. And when you actually look closely at it's not like a Rembrandt painting or anything. It's just suggestions of colour with a few extra details brought to the fore. And what he showed with that was just how easy it is to make your own back scenes. You don't actually need a lot of artistic skill to create a backdrop that suits your layout perfectly.
Am I right in saying a lot of that was chalk based?
Yeah, it's just artist's chalk. You have to actually be quite careful how you handle it, because it does rub off on your hands. We keep meaning to spray it with a fixative and never quite get round to it.
But there is a lot of little details on here as well, which I'm quite fond of. Obviously, you've got the infamous cow on the hillside over there, which you've all seen on the show.
That was that comes from the hand of Melanie Lewis. She made that right at the end, and she thought it would be like a funny little cameo. It's actually from Mars Attacks, but it's just this one little thing. And actually, as predicted, Tim, the presenter, he loves humorous things like that, so it gave him something to home in on.
I think that was a wise move in the end to get a bit of judge's approval. And there is a few other little small details here, isn't there? There's a few. Obviously, you've got the destroyed road on the street here, and bodies on the station too.
Yeah. Well, the town scene area here, this was Brian Long, who's another one of the team members, made, and a lot of that is done by dremeling through they're actually Scaledale buildings,
right?
And then using the technique with the dyed cotton wool to give the suggestion that they're on fire. And a top tip from him is always do it outside. Actually, if you dremel into these to kind of make these burnt out or damaged buildings,
that's resin. Yeah,
it makes a lot of dust. But that was something that he did, and by customising these buildings like that, you can kind of make them very unique to your layout, because you've got something that nobody else has. And in some respects, a part of modelling is about stamping your mark on a model and making it, something that you can point out and say, I did that and that's special and nobody else has got something like that. And the people lying down is just a case of, we thought, well, it talks about the rout of mankind in the book, in the films, in the Jeff Wayne musical version. So they're just regular figures, but instead of glued upright, they're just lying down.
Which is something you're never going to see in a normal model, is it?
I think as well, you have to push the boat out a little bit with this. You've got to think, we want to make a spectacle. So there are things on this that you wouldn't necessarily do if you were model rally.
Yeah.
And you even got the guy with the
I love that. That's a fantastic image.
Yeah, and it's just sometimes little tiny details like that bring a model out.
You've got the bloke trying to escape at the...
yeah, he's just about to jump
on
over
the ship
the side.
as well.
But then there's other things as well. On the actual programme, people may have seen there was a tank here. I've forgotten to bring the tanks with me to put back out. But this bench here, it's one of the Metcalf benches, but it's been specifically made. These are ones that are not broken. But that was specifically made by Stefan to look like the tank had run over it.
You can really see that. That's a
and it's just like little details like that we've tried to kind of bring through. And I think it's the hallmark of a good model that the closer you look, the more little details you see. So it rewards intensive viewing.
So at the end, it's not just the proper TV, it is proper layout. It's got those little details and it's got so much going on.
Yeah, I mean, it has turned out very well. We're very proud of what we managed to achieve, especially given the short length of time.
Yeah.
But the end result is a fully functioning model railway. I mean, even today, you've had it running and it still works absolutely fine. So, you know, as something that you can actually have as your home layout, it's actually quite practical.
Yeah. Okay, so that was War of the Worlds, one of the fantastic layouts that were shown on Season 2 of the Great Model Railway Challenge. What's next for the layout?
Well, we've been booked in to go and exhibit this at Alexandra Palace next year, 2020. And I'm sure that now the episode has gone out, there's going to be a few more invites coming in for this layout. And also we've got a long-term home worked out as soon as Bolton Model Railway Club get their new, bigger premises. They've promised us some space that we're going to be able to keep this in. So hopefully it's going to do a few more dates on the exhibition circuit.
So if you want to come and see it for yourself, there's going to be plenty of opportunities to do that in the future.
Well, that's been great, hasn't it? And a big, big thank you to Jack and all at Hattons for inviting me down here and giving me the chance to show off a bit more of this great layout that Team Rail Riders built, Great Model Railway Challenge. So I hope you've enjoyed this. You can also find down below a few links to help you out. If some of the goodies that you see on here have really tickled your fancy, just to help you find where you can get your own version of those items. Also, if you haven't already done so, don't forget to subscribe to this video and share it too. That's really important. And you take really good care of yourself, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Today's video has been brought to you in part thanks to the generous donation of my fans on Patreon. And an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Bob Threeton, Alec Ralph, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Allen, and oorail.co.uk. If you'd like to help support the show, head on over to patreon.com/Jennifer Kirk. Thank you. Today's video has been brought to you by my books, Bringing Home the Stars, Twinkle Little Star, and also you can get the complete comic collections of All Over the House, Books 1, Books 2, and also the wacky zany Life of Knob T. Mouse. Thanks, and catch you later.